They told you this would be the fastest 400-meter race in history. They were wrong, and what actually happened on that track is stranger than anything you could have predicted. Picture this. One lane. One line on the track. And a number so small it barely feels real. In the entire recorded history of the sport, only 32 men have ever run the 400 meters in under 44 seconds. 32. Not 32 this year. Not 32 this decade. 32, ever, across the entire history of track and field. Compare that to the 100 meters, where well over 200 men have broken the 10-second barrier. Compare it to the 200, where more than 100 men have gone under 20 seconds. The 400 stands apart. It is the race that swallows sprinters whole. It looks like a sprint for the first 200 meters, and then, somewhere around the final bend, it turns into something closer to survival. The legs fill with acid. The form falls apart. Men who look untouchable at 100 meters come apart in the final straight of the 400, gasping, fading, holding on by instinct alone. Even Usain Bolt, the fastest human being who ever lived, never seriously attempted this distance, because the training required to master it would have destroyed the very speed that made him a legend. So when the world learned who was lining up at the Ed Murphy Classic in Memphis, the entire track and field community stopped scrolling. This wasn't just a race. This was being called, before a single starting block was even set, one of the most loaded 400-meter fields ever assembled outside of an Olympic final. And everyone, every fan, every analyst, every message board, believed they were about to witness history. They were wrong. But not in the way you'd expect. Let's talk about who was actually standing on that start line, because to understand how shocking this night became, you first need to understand just how much was riding on it. Start with the name that had already made headlines across the country, Quincy Wilson. If you don't already know this name, you will never forget it after today. At 16 years old, an age when most of us were worrying about algebra homework, Wilson made the United States Olympic team as part of the 4x400 relay pool. He barely got to compete, running only in the early rounds, but Team USA went on to win Olympic gold. That single fact made him the youngest American male track and field Olympian in history. 16 years old, and already an Olympic gold medalist, before he was legally allowed to vote for the people who'd one day put his face on a stamp. But Wilson wasn't done. That same year, he obliterated the world under-18 best in the 400 meters, clocking 44.20 seconds in Florida, a time that made grown professionals do a double take. Then, 1 year later, at this exact same meet in Memphis, he went even faster, 44.10 seconds, beating a field that included a former Olympic champion. That run made him the second fastest under-20 athlete of all time, trailing only one man, Steve Lewis, who ran an almost mythical 43.87 to win Olympic gold as a 19-year-old, back in 1988. Before some of your grandparents finished high school, Wilson started running at 8 years old. By the time he reached Bullis School in Maryland, he was already smashing national high school records, and by all accounts, his competitors would look defeated before the starting gun even fired. 2 years running, 2 record-breaking performances, both set right here in Memphis. But here's the twist nobody talks about. His final high school race, the one meant to cap off an undefeated legacy, did not go his way. At the U.S. Under-20 championships, Wilson ran a respectable 44.84, but it wasn't enough. He finished second, beaten by a rising talent named Jaden Dion, who crossed the line first in 44.52. For a runner who had barely tasted defeat, that loss cut deep. And if you know anything about elite athletes, you know exactly what that kind of loss can do, it becomes fuel. Everyone expected Memphis to be his redemption. Now flip to the other side of the race. Samuel Ogazi. At just 20 years old, this Nigerian sprinter had already rewritten the record books at the University of Alabama, capturing back-to-back NCAA titles in the 400 meters. But it was what he did at the NCAA championships in Eugene, Oregon that truly shook the sport. Ogazi exploded to a time of 43.38 seconds, shattering a collegiate record that had stood since 2018, a record set by Michael Norman, one of the greatest quarter-milers in history. That single run pushed Ogazi to fourth on the all-time global list. Only 3 men in the history of the sport have ever run faster: Wade van Niekerk, the world record holder at 43.03. Michael Johnson, the legend, at 43.18. And Butch Reynolds, at 43.29. Ogazi's time was faster than what won Olympic gold in Paris in 2024. Let that sink in. A college athlete had just run a time that would have beaten the reigning Olympic champion. And Ogazi didn't just arrive at that number out of nowhere. He built to it all season: 44.02, then 43.95, then 43.82, each race a little faster, each one a warning shot before the explosion at Nationals. His run also shattered a Nigerian national record that had stood for almost 30 years, instantly making him a national hero back home, not just a college standout in America. Memphis would mark something else, too. It was Ogazi's very first race as a professional. Straight from the glory of the NCAA into a stacked international field, no cushion, no easing in. Just straight into the fire. And the fire had more than just these two. Grenada's Kirani James, the 2012 Olympic champion, still dangerous in his 30s, still capable of a devastating final 100 meters, lined up looking for one more statement performance. Jamaica's Antonio Watson. America's Randolph Ross. This wasn't just a deep field. This was, by nearly every measure, one of the deepest 400-meter lineups assembled anywhere in the 2026 season. And as if the universe wanted to add one more layer of tension, back at the NCAA championships, a Georgia freshman named Jonathan Sims had quietly run 43.92, becoming only the second man in history to break 44 seconds as a junior athlete, joining none other than Steve Lewis from 1988. He wasn't even in the Memphis field, and his performance alone had fans buzzing that 2026 might go down as the fastest 400-meter season the sport had ever seen. So there it was. Fast track. Warm, humid Memphis air, the exact conditions that had fueled Wilson's personal best the year before, in this exact stadium. A field stacked with an Olympic champion, a collegiate record holder, a teenage phenom hungry for redemption, and veterans with nothing left to lose. Online, the debate raged for days. Would Wilson finally break the sacred 44-second barrier? Could Ogazi go even faster now that he was free from the constraints of college competition? Message boards lit up with predictions, breakdowns, split-time projections. Some fans genuinely believed they were about to witness a moment that would be replayed for decades, the night a teenager finally cracked one of track and field's most exclusive barriers. Everyone was ready. Everyone was watching. And then the gun fired. What happened next stunned everyone in that stadium. Samuel Ogazi won the race. But not with fireworks. Not with a time that would rewrite history. He crossed the line in 44.57 seconds, more than a full second slower than the 43.38 that had made him a household name just weeks earlier. Antonio Watson took second in 44.70. Kirani James, still fighting, still proving he belonged, rounded out the podium in 45.04. Solid performances. Respectable times. But nowhere close to what an entire sport had been promised. And Quincy Wilson? The 16-year-old prodigy turned 18-year-old contender, the runner so many believed was destined to break the sub-44 barrier on this very night, in this very stadium. He finished 7th. 7th. With a time of 45.53, nowhere near his personal best of 44.10, nowhere close to the history he was supposed to make. Randolph Ross finished 6th in 45.48. Gabriel Maranta placed 4th in 45.22. Delano Kennedy closed out the field in 45.82. No world record. No sub-44 performance. Not from Wilson. Not from Ogazi. Not from anyone. After months of build-up, after every prediction, every heated debate, every fan convinced they were about to witness one of the rarest feats in the sport, the most anticipated 400-meter showdown of the summer quietly became one of the most forgettable races of the entire season. And maybe that's the part of this sport that people forget. We talk about athletes like they're machines, like if the talent is there, the time just happens. But the 400 meters doesn't care about hype. It doesn't care about predictions, or message board debates, or how many personal bests you ran the season before. It is one of the most unforgiving events in all of sport, and on any given night, it can humble even the fastest men alive. Quincy Wilson will get more chances. He's still only 18. Samuel Ogazi has already proven what he's capable of. 44.57 is a bad night for him, not a ceiling. And somewhere out there, that sub-44 barrier is still waiting to be broken by one of these two names, maybe sooner than anyone thinks. But on this particular night, in Memphis, the sport reminded everyone of something important: history doesn't wait for the hype. It comes when it comes, on its own terms, and sometimes, the most talked about race of the year is remembered not for what happened, but for what didn't. If this story pulled you in, if you felt that tension building right alongside these athletes, wondering if this would finally be the night, then you already know why we do what we do here. We're not just here to give you results and numbers. We're here to make you feel every stride, every heartbreak, every twist that this sport throws at us, because that's what makes track and field more than just a stopwatch and a finish line. It's human. It's raw. And it doesn't always go the way we expect, just like tonight. So if you want to be here for the next one, the next impossible showdown, the next record chase, the next night where history might finally get made, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. This community means everything to me, and every single one of you watching right now is part of the reason we get to keep telling these stories. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about this sport as much as I do. And I'll see you in the next one.